Start by just saying that our hearts go out to the victims in this case, most importantly, Robert DeCesar and his family and loved ones. Mr. DeCesar was just having dinner with his family at the country club, and his life was tragically taken. So our hearts go out to him and his family. Our hearts go out to the other victims at the event. I just want to provide a little detail there. We had 2 other gunshot victims, as we put in our release earlier. One of those victims was an employee of the restaurant. One of those victims was a patron. We had 4 other individuals suffer non-gunshot wounds. Those 4 individuals were all patrons. Now, the investigation is in the early stages, so it is possible that we may learn of other individuals who suffered wounds as they were trying to leave the club and get out of there. But at this point, that's what we know. We have the deceased, we have 2 other gunshot victims, and we have 4 non-gunshot wounds. Thanks to the quick action of law enforcement and some quick and selfless actions of patrons in the restaurant, this ended up being a fairly contained event. It lasted well under a minute, and it was not nearly as tragic as it could have been. So I want to commend Nashua PD and all of the first responders who were quick to the scene. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the patrons in the restaurant who acted selflessly and quickly with more care for their fellow citizens than for themselves to help keep this a contained event and minimize this tragedy as much as it could. This is still a very tragic event, but it could have been much worse. I want to talk a little bit about our suspect and now defendant, Hunter Nadeau, 23 years old. He's a Nashua resident, and as we put out earlier this morning, he's been arrested and charged with reckless second-degree murder for shooting Mr. DeCesar. As the investigation continues, we expect that additional charges will be added, but we're in the early stages, and at this point he's been charged with reckless second-degree murder. Mr. Nadeau is, as I said, a Nashua resident. He's a former employee of the club, and I want to talk a little bit about the statements he's made and what we know about his motive. There's been reports that he made certain statements such as Free Palestine, but based on the evidence we have gathered, Mr. Nadeau made a number of statements during the event, and we don't have any evidence at this time that would indicate that Mr. Nadeau was motivated by a hate-based motivation. In fact, I would say that at this point, the evidence leads us to believe that it is more likely that Mr. Nadeau was simply trying to make a number of statements to create chaos in the moment. Again, the investigation's in its early stages, and we're still gathering a lot of information. There were a lot of witnesses present. They heard different things. They saw different things. They had different perspectives. They might remember things differently. But again, at this point, we don't have any evidence to indicate that this was a hate-based act. An autopsy will be conducted tomorrow for Mr. DeCesar by the chief medical examiner, and we expect that Mr. Nadeau will be arraigned in Nashua District Court by WebEx. At this point, we believe that arraignment will take place at 1 p.m. The court could always change its schedule. I want to reemphasize the great work that law enforcement and first responders did last night, both Nashua PD and many other agencies who came to the aid of Nashua PD. I want to again commend the selfless acts of courage by the patrons in the restaurant who, again, put aside care for their own safety and work to intervene and stop the shooter and keep this a much more contained event than it may otherwise have been. The governor has been briefed. We've been briefing the governor all night, so the governor and her team have been briefed on this, and they are aware of the details, and we're in close communication with them. I know she is monitoring this closely. Other state leaders have been kept informed and are monitoring this investigation and this situation. Just want to close by saying I know this has been a really tough last half day or so for the Nashua community and the state and all of the victims affected. Again, our hearts go out to them, and we're going to continue to work to gather information, gather evidence, and get to a point where we understand the motive behind this tragic event. We're still in the early stages. And I can't emphasize that enough. We're still in the early stages. We're less than 24 hours in, but we're going to keep working. We're going to keep gathering the evidence and the information to try to identify what the motive was here. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Rourke for a couple comments, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Kevin Rourke, Chief of Police. First, my thoughts and prayers go out to the DeCesar family. This was a senseless act. I would also like to commend those civilians last night who showed quick and selfless action, putting themselves in harm's way. I want to commend the officers of the Nashua Police Department for an incredible job last night. Their teamwork, their courage, and resiliency were amazing. I want to also thank our partners from our local police departments, Manchester, Hollis, Hudson, Merrimack, Hillsborough County Sheriffs, New Hampshire State Police, Mass State Police, our federal partners, the ATF, the FBI, and HSI. We also worked hand in hand with AMR, National Fire Rescue, and the Emergency Management Office from City Hall, who were very instrumental in this investigation. If I forgot an agency, I apologize in advance. This was an incredible response from our officers and our partners. These officers relied on their training. We train a lot. We train for events like this. You have a different amounts of information being reported to you. Put yourself in their shoes. You were told there were multiple shooters on a golf course in the dark, wooded areas, residential area, and then the venue. They responded quickly, swiftly, and effectively. Within 30 minutes, these officers were able to find someone and detain them who ended up being the suspect. That is remarkable. Of events like this you see around the country or the world, to find someone in 30 minutes is pretty effective, pretty efficient, and they did it safely. At this time, we would take questions. I'll end my statement at that point.
Hey, General, you talked about he was a former employee at Sky Meadow. You believe he was targeting someone, and did the victim stop that?
We're not prepared to comment on that at this point. Again, we're trying to gather evidence and information related to motive, but the fact that he was a former employee is something we want to look further into.
Was he fired recently?
He hadn't worked there for about a year. I'm not familiar with his employment status when he left.
And the employee that was injured with the gunshot, can you go into more detail about his title at the restaurant? Was he a manager?
I'm not going to go into more detail on that at this time.
Can you expand on some of the statements that you said that he also said in addition to Free Palestine?
I'm not going to get into what specific statements he made other than just to reemphasize he was making a lot of different statements, and it appears to us that it's more likely that those statements were intended to create chaos during the event and that they don't really give us much of a sense of his motive.
In terms of the event, can you help kind of separate between the restaurant and the wedding venue? I know there's been a little confusion. I know obviously it was chaotic for both scenes.
Sure.
Can you help kind of explain the layout, the proximity, and how that may have played into
want me to take that?
Yeah, I'm going to let the chief take that because I think he's more familiar with it.
Sure, if you're familiar with the venue, as you come in, there's the reception halls, banquet halls onto the right-hand side. The first gentleman that was shot was, if you want to call him a host, but he was working for, I would say, the wedding venue as a host out here in the hallway by the bathrooms. The further incident, the next shooting, was in the Prime restaurant.
Did the suspect ever go into the wedding, or was he contained to the restaurant?
We don't have that information. It's still, like the general said, it's still ongoing. We're still learning things up to the minute.
Chief, you credited law enforcement. Can you walk us through his arrest, like in that 30 minutes? Where was he arrested? Did he try to get away?
No, he did not get away. He was cooperative. They found him in a nearby neighborhood. But again, put yourself in the officer's shoes. You think there's two out there. It's a very dangerous situation, so tactics have to come into play. But they did find him in a nearby neighborhood.
Was he still armed?
I'm not going to answer that question right now.
The two gunshot victims, we heard that one of them was airlifted. Can you just go into their conditions, into the detail of their conditions right now?
One of them's at Mass General, and they are critical but stable.
One of them was airlifted.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Can you talk about the resources used by law enforcement throughout the night tonight, or excuse me, last night, that helped them find the suspect?
Sure. There was many resources, Mass State Police, New Hampshire State Police, our own units, our own specialty units, the drone unit. Those things were up in the air pretty quickly. In law enforcement, we're all one entity, right? So we develop partnerships and that brotherhood, which is taught from day one. And, I can't thank the other agencies for the mutual aid. The quick, swift response was incredible. In fact, overwhelming because I couldn't answer all the calls at once. But everybody just called, they wanted to help, and they came and helped. And that is a big, big scene. You have people going everywhere, and you're trying to figure things out and process information as things are coming in. So it's a very difficult situation to process, but I can't commend our officers enough for what they did.
Did you have lockdowns in neighborhoods? A lot of people, especially elderly, live in Huntington, Langdon Place, and not to mention Sky Meadow. Were they placed in lockdown briefly?
They were not, and like I said, I guess you can call it controlled chaos at that point, and the quick response of once we were able to figure out there was one shooter, and we had detained one, I didn't feel it was necessary to do that, and plus you're dealing with all the injuries, the witnesses at the scene, and then where we put them up at National Fire Rescue on Spitbrook Road. So you got to get a lot of assets in there and a lot of people in there.
How
Do you think
long
his
was he
political
inside the
beliefs-
restaurant, inside the venue, and did he engage with anybody as he left?
That I don't know. We're
You don't
still
know how long he was inside?
I don't know.
Where did the initial confusion come from about two shooters? Was it through 911 calls?
I don't know. I know that was put out there, and we're dealing with information, and you got to discard the erroneous information and then the facts, right? So we're trying to get to the facts.
Through video pretty quickly.
Yes.
There was just
Was NATO familiar with National PD and vice versa? Was he on did you know who he was? Had he had any dealings with him in the past?
That I don't know, sir. I don't know.
He had
Do you
no
think his
record?
political beliefs played a part in this?
Again, we're still gathering evidence and information related to his motive. We don't think the statements he made lead us to any particular motive, but again, we're in the early stages. So depending on what we learn as we look at the evidence, look at the info, we may change our determination.
Do you know how many people were in the restaurant, the wedding? How big of a wedding was it?
I don't know at this time. We are working on getting people back their property that was left at the wedding, so we're looking to get the list of the wedding, so I think we would find out then. Information that I have right now, I don't know how many.
The weapon was a handgun, correct, that the suspect had?
Yes.
Was it
We're
his
hearing from
handgun?
witnesses too that people opened up their homes on the property and let them shelter in place when this was going on. Just kind of your reaction to that and what you're hearing from the community in the vicinity, the immediate area that stepped forward.
Honestly, I haven't heard that yet. It's a great community. That is a great area, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. So, but firsthand, I don't know that for sure.
Did he have a license for the firearm?
As far as ownership and license of the firearm, that's information we're not going to get into at this point, and it's part of the evidence that we're still gathering.
Can you please tell us about the other victims? You said 4 other people were somehow hurt. Can you tell us more about those folks?
Yeah, the 4 others that we're aware of, that when we think we know, it's 4, non-gunshot wounds, and those were suffered in the course of either getting away from the event or in the intervention with the shooter. We don't expect that those are going to be life-threatening injuries, but again, it's early, and we can't get into the details of their medical treatment.
Are the 2 who were shot both at the hospital right now, and are they expected to survive?
We can't get into prognosis on that right now. As the chief said, the employee who was shot was airlifted to a hospital in Massachusetts and is in critical but stable condition. The other gunshot victim, we don't have the details on at this point.
Do you know how he left the country club? Was he chased out? Did he run out on his own?
We don't have all the specifics on that, and we also don't want to get into that. Like I said earlier, the event itself was well under a minute, but after he left the area of the event, those details we're still looking to firm up.
Chief, can you just let people know, because a lot of people are watching this live, what to do if they were in the restroom or in the wedding and their cards are there, their belongings are there, etc.?
We are posting stuff on Twitter. We will keep you updated once we can get them their stuff. We want to get them their stuff, so the venue can go on. We will keep you, the public, informed of getting their property back to them,
Still an active crime scene for the rest of the day?
as far as I know.
And is state police major crime involved, or are you guys processing?
National Police Department, in conjunction with the Attorney General's office.
FBI still involved? I know you thank your federal partners.
Yes. Are they still involved? No. I mean, they're always, we have partnerships with them, so they're always available. Are they here today? No.
All right. Well, thank you all. We will provide more information once we have it available. Thank you.